Thank you so much for joining today's early intervention echo. We're really excited about today's topic. As you noticed, we are recording today's session. They are always stored on our Canvas page as well as our YouTube channel. So it's a way to just improve that quality improvement, as well as be able to go back and listen to some of the information that is shared in our sessions. You can also share the recordings with other colleagues and coworkers who have not been able to listen to these. We love Echo being interactive. I know virtually sometimes it's easy to put yourself on mute and turn off your camera and just silently listen, but it's a great way to continue to get to know each other over Zoom and in this virtual reality that sometimes we live in. So Kurt Phillips monitors the chat for us. He will make sure your questions are answered. He'll make sure that whatever you have in the chat is there. You're also free to come off mute and just ask your questions, raising your hand. The only thing that we do ask is that you protect that individual privacy. So avoid using any identifiable information about that. Key components of an echo. If you've never been, welcome to your first echo. They are a wonderful way to learn from all these amazing colleagues throughout not only just the state of Utah, but we have participants from Montana, North Dakota, Idaho, and even some back east. So it's a great way to see how other early intervention providers are doing things. We will always have a didactic speaker, a case presentation and recommendations where we can build that professional networking and getting to know what everybody else throughout those states are doing. Today's session is going to be a little bit different because we have three amazing families that are going to share with us their story and help us understand what they wish early intervention providers knew from their perspective. Again, just renaming your profile. It's always helpful to know where people are, what their names are, so that when somebody shares something, like I can see Heather on my screen, and if Heather Waters, that would share something, I would know then how to reach out to her at DHHS and ask some follow-up questions. So again, it's just building that professional networking with each other. Raising your hand, it is down by your participant button. Again, you can just put things into the chat or come off mute and we will make sure that we call on you. In order to get a credit of attendance or a certificate, we do ask that you fill out that survey. And we appreciate everybody who fills out that survey for us. It's how we can then go show to our funders that the impact that we are making throughout the state, as well as throughout the nation, so that we can continue to host these echo sessions. We email those monthly after the surveys are completed. We are also celebrating 5 years of ECHO here at the Institute for Disability Research, Policy, and Practice. So throughout this year, we are going to be giving away swag, different things to just celebrate the amount and impact that we have. So look for those. It's always fun to get free stuff. So we do also send those out when we get certificates completed or you've attended so many echo sessions. Canvas is where we store everything. So if you would like access to our Canvas page, please email us at earlyecho@usu.edu and we will get you registered for that Canvas page. We always love case studies. Case studies are a great way to, one, get information from all these amazing people on the call. enlarge what you guys share in those case studies. We have shared over 800 resources in 2024 to everybody to help serve those families that we're working with. It's a great way to get that information, learn from all these amazing people. I love hearing some of the things that Pat is doing in some of her sessions, so then I can implement those with the families I'm working with. That's a great way to get resources and recommendations, and because you guys are all the experts on the call. So if you're interested in doing that, you can reach out to Early Echo at aggies.usu.edu, and we will get you on the schedule for that. I know sometimes it's hard to do that case presentation. It makes us a little nervous. So if you want to share a case, but you don't want to present it, just reach out to us and I will be glad to present it for you. It's an amazing opportunity to get some great recommendations. We do have a new Facebook group that we are hoping to just continue some discussions after the session. There's sometimes that those breakout groups are shorter and we don't always get those follow-up questions answered. So it's just another way to learn from the amazing colleagues on this call and brainstorm different ideas and solutions. We also have social media. So Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn that we share resources on and share additional information. So I'm going to stop sharing and I am going to introduce our speakers. And Shana, I have not been paying attention. So are they all on there? So we have Shanda, who she's going to present. We have Kylie Van Dyke. She's going to present, and our last one is Caitlin. And Shana, if you'll come off mute and tell me whether.
I think we have everyone here.
Okay, so we are gonna start with Shanda. She is going to be sharing with us her. I can't see her on my screen. Why can't I see her? Shanda, say.
Right here.
There you are. I'm like, I can't see you on my screen. Where are you? Hey.
Okay, I did make a PowerPoint, but it really is just pictures because I love to share pictures of my kiddos.
Exactly. We all do. So go right ahead and you should have access to.
Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so I thought I would just kind of share our journey and from birth to home and past home and throw in some things I kind of wish the hospital knew. I don't know if that benefits anybody, but throw in some things there and progress to being home with early intervention. Does that sound okay? Can I?
That sounds perfect. Yep.
Great. Okay, so just a quick introduction. This is Memphis and Savannah. So we had twins. They were born at 24 weeks exactly. And we were at University of Utah and were very quickly transferred to Primary Children's Hospital. We didn't have any warning or prep time. We didn't know. We didn't have it. I just went into labor. It just happened really quickly. So there wasn't any time on our part to prepare for anything. We were just kind of thrown into this unknown world to us. So it was a very crazy time. And one of the things I think that I loved right from the beginning was that we had this social worker who pulled us aside at the University of Utah right after the twins were born. And she said, hey, I know you guys don't know what to expect. Nobody really knows what to expect, but I can tell you it's going to be a really hard journey. And I would love for you to, choose to be married because so many marriages are going to fail in this time. And if you want to be married at the end of it, it's because you chose to be. And I think just having that tiny bit of information, right? Just that, hey, this is going to be hard and you need to focus on this, gave us some footing because it's impossible to know what to expect. And I've talked to so many families since then who just wish at the beginning somebody would have mentioned to them how hard it was going to be, given them just a tiny bit of information. So when we started our journey, obviously we were pretty knee deep in trauma. I had just had a C-section. We have a sweet 2.5-year-old at home. She had only ever known home with me. I had been a stay-at-home mom with her. We had 2 critically ill babies in the hospital. We were learning a whole new medical language, trying to piece together what was happening with our twins, and trying to keep the statistics of losing one or both of them kind of out of our brains and far away from from our day to day. So in that time, we just really needed things repeated. We needed to ask a million questions. We needed to talk. We needed support. Everybody had answers and knowledge that we needed, but we didn't know what we didn't know. And I feel like that continued for years after we had the twins, not just in the hospital, but even coming home and being at home and trying to figure things out. So when we were in the hospital, that burden largely fell to the bedside nurse. And so having a bedside nurse that was confident and patient, that made a huge difference for us. When therapists would visit bedside or specialists would visit bedside, and they would take some time to talk to parents too, and not just do what they needed to do and rush off to the next thing, that made a huge difference for us. We just needed constant communication. Like I said, we didn't know what we didn't know. And it just feels like a puzzle when you're in that situation. So when we had somebody who was willing to be honest with us, totally honest, and say something like, hey, I know that this is scary, but what's likely next to happen with your children is a PDA ligation. And this is just something that's common at this gestation. It's not something you need to worry about. It's going to be okay. That made a huge difference because we knew at that point a little bit of maybe what the next steps would look like. We also needed coaching and help on how to advocate for our babies and how to talk to doctors appropriately. We really didn't know this world. We were just, thrown into it. So let's see here. I don't think so here is let me see. I apologize. Let me get back to. See if I can get the next slide up. There's Big Sis. She was 2.5 when we had the twins. There we go. So she was 2.5 when we had the twins. She was little, and there was just so much going on with her at home. Also, she was also traumatized. Her life was also flipped upside down, and we were just trying to figure out how to manage and balance everything. One of the things I wish was different then, and I wish was different even now for families, is I wish that we had parent support better in the hospital. My husband has cystic fibrosis, and he has quarterly meetings with his whole medical team. As part of that quarterly meeting, he's required to meet with social work every single time. And I think by and large, caregiving is so much harder than being the patient, especially when you're a baby. And I wish that we had a support, whether that's social work or whether there was some other way in the hospital to get some parent support. We had 4 different meetings with doctors where we were talking and the doctors would say something like, it's at this point that many parents would consider pulling life support. We just want you to know that's an option on the table. And even in those meetings, we didn't have parent support. We didn't have social work backup. We didn't have anybody kind of there in our corner. It was us and the doctor. And looking back with different eyes, I feel like that's a little bit crazy that we didn't have support kind of built in to that. So that's really one of the biggest things I wish from those hospital days is that we had a little more support built in to help parents understand what it is we're supposed to be doing. We were in the hospital a long time. So this picture here of me holding both of my babies, that was the first time I held them. They were born in June, and that picture was taken in December. So it was a really long road before we were even able to really have them together. Savannah went home after 7 months, and she was home 6 weeks before Memphis came home. And as we got closer to going home, I was completely terrified. It seemed like the doctors and the nurses and pretty much the whole hospital staff was only talking about how wonderful it was going to be when we got home. It was going to be so amazing when we got home, and everybody was home in the same house. But I didn't. I guess my frustration with it was that these medical professionals, whom I love, they don't have any concept of what it is to take care of a critically ill baby in the house. They know what it is to take care of a critically ill baby at the hospital, where they have all of the resources they could possibly need at their fingertips. But going from a 24-an-hour, cycle of doctors and therapists and specialists and nurses to me and my husband, it was terrifying. So I wish as we got closer to going home, first of all, I wish that we could have come home with something like a summary sheet that said, okay, here's the surgeries that your babies have had, here's the dates, here are the doctors that are following them, here are their meds, here's their diagnoses. Because we go back to the hospital and it's all in their chart, but their chart is hundreds and hundreds of pages long. And I also, along those lines, I think if someone could have coached us on what it would be like to come back to the hospital and be admitted to the floor versus being admitted to an ICU, because those things are night and day different, and I was not prepared for what that would look like. So there's when Memphis came home. And when Memphis came home, about 6 weeks after Savannah, I had been kind of arguing with the doctor. I knew he wasn't ready to come home. And the doctor kept pushing and pushing. But he really wasn't in a good spot. He could pull out his oxygen cannula, and before the pulse oximeter would pick it up, he would be in his 40s with his oxygen sats. So when we got both of them home, it really was a blessing in some ways, but it was so hard. And I'm really grateful in those weeks as Memphis was getting ready to come home that I had Pat. She was amazing. She helped us so much, and she sat us down and she said things like, "You're going to need a really good pediatrician, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but this guy's really good." And not having to do all the research and look at all the names, that made a huge difference. And she said, "You're going to want early intervention as well as home health. How about let's get all the paperwork done and everything ready before you go home." She also gave me resources like the Parent Center, which was amazing. So that was really good. I wish we could have left with a little more help and had a better understanding of what home was even going to look like, because medical professionals really don't know what home is going to look like. So we had both of them home, and it was crazy. And one of the things that really saved me, and I think she was probably operating outside of her bounds, was I had this amazing therapist who came into our home a couple times to do sessions, and somewhere along the third or fourth time she came, she brought me a cup of coffee, and she and she said, "Hey, I hope I'm not overstepping here, but I've seen how completely overwhelmed, how completely exhausted you are. And I had some contacts at the Utah Doula Association. And I reached out and asked if anybody would be willing to donate some hours to you for postpartum care. And I had two, I'm going to cry, even all these years later. I had two doulas volunteer some time and came in and took the night shift so I could sleep because I wasn't sleeping at all when they came home. So the thing with that is, even though she was probably like overstepping a little bit, operating outside of what's normal, she really saved me. And the therapists coming in are the ones who really see the picture. They really see what's going on in the home and the emotional state of the parents and how the kids are doing, everything like that. And it made all the difference for me. And even just having a team set up so that we could have people start coming as soon as we got home was a big deal. Having people who knew what they were doing, who had medical experience, who could help me figure things out as we went, already set up coming into our home, that was a huge benefit for us. So these relationships, I feel like, were invaluable. I don't know how much we could have done without them. So this is their first birthday. It really was what saved us, these teams coming in. And I feel like people seeing us and recognizing us, being able to talk to us, because the hard thing about coming home, one of them, is that you don't just stop on the path of diagnoses. You continue getting diagnoses, you continue with figuring your children out medically. You continue with learning how to care for them, and you're doing it without the benefit of being in the hospital, necessarily having a bedside nurse or someone who can kind of talk you through and coach you through it. And a lot of the research, when you're the most tired and the most worn out, then falls back onto your shoulders to try and figure out. So having the team was a really big deal. Also, there were so many days in that first year. That first year of them being home was the hardest year of the most traumatic year of my entire life. And I didn't do any therapy assignments at all. I was lucky to feed myself and my kids and keep them alive that day. I wasn't working towards specific goals. I was just really grateful that we could have people keep coming. So I think I was just going to show a couple pictures and show you where they are now, but this was their second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and this was New Year's Eve last year with Big Sister. So they are doing remarkably well for all the things that they have gone through. But I think there are so many things, especially in the hospital system, that I kind of wish could have been better. Even still, wish they could be better. Even still, for parents going through. But the support and having somebody there and again teaching me things I didn't know that I didn't know, and helping us through, that really saved us. Anyway, I don't know that was quite the amount of time, and I'm happy to answer questions because I'm going to have to pop off early. If you wanted me to answer any questions or anything.
Shanda, I really loved your perspective of saying that maybe you weren't necessarily doing some of the strategies that early interventionists were providing, but you were just grateful for some of that support. I don't know if that's something more that you could speak to.
Sure. If I'm completely honest, we have been in therapies, outside therapies, obviously not early intervention this whole time, but it was probably 6 months ago before I started taking a break from some of the therapies. So we've been doing them 7 years. And I don't think it was until maybe they were 5.5 that I started actually doing home programs with my kids. It was just way too much work. But I wanted them to have what they could have, even if I couldn't keep working with them at home because my plate was just way too full. I just wanted them to have every ounce that they could have from other people because I just didn't have it to give. Um, I was just trying to survive and keep them alive. So that was my perspective. You know, there was a couple times, especially with outside therapies, that would get a little irritated sometimes. I can tell you're not working on this. And I was like, but I mean, we're all just surviving. We're all just doing the best we can and trying to give my kids the best I can give them, you know. So
Yeah, no, that's great. Would there be things that we as providers could do to help support a parent who is kind of in the midst of just trying to survive rather than laying on more guilt sometimes?
I mean, I think uh, if I'm honest, I don't know that I ever had early intervention step in and say anything in that way, you know, that kind of was more guilting. But I think everybody could just kind of see where they were. Occasionally, there would be someone who would say something like, I think we really need to pay attention to this. Like my son, Memphis, is deaf, and it took us 18 months to even worry about his deafness, right? Because I was just doing what was exactly in front of me and what needed my immediate. I was just putting out fires. And we did have someone from the PIP team who was like, you know, research shows that if we can get him implanted by 2, he's going to have a much better success rate. And so it was more of a gentle, like, you don't have to pay attention to this yet, but I think it could benefit, right? If you did start putting it on your radar, this is what research shows. There wasn't any guilt, it was just understanding and knowledge.
Yeah.
It kind of went back to that piece of everybody has knowledge that we need, and we just don't know all the pieces.
Yeah, that's I appreciate that thought and advice for that. There is a question that says, would you be interested in talking to a mom that is in the Moab area about the struggle?
Absolutely. I am so I have been volunteering at the hospital as a parent to parent mentor at Primary Children's, and I kind of have a large network now of families I've worked with who have gone home, or I'm always happy to talk to somebody. So definitely.
Can I drop your contact information in the chat?
Yep.
Okay, I will do that. So Audrey, I will drop that in the chat in just a minute.
I just want to say one thing about Shanda is I have, even though we exited at 3, I have called her and used her plenty for some of my families. She's a fabulous mentor. Fabulous.
I think it was always important to me to not just have this experience be mine, because it's such a hidden experience. So many people really have no idea unless you've been there. And so I just didn't want it to only be my experience. I've wanted to share.
And I agree completely. Like that is because so my daughter was preemie as well, and she was in here when you first started talking, and seeing those pictures, I was like, this was you when you were a little baby. This is you. Like I could just feel some of that connection with you as you were going through it. So I love
Yeah.
the idea of sharing it with others.
Yes, definitely.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Shanda?
You know, I would just add something that she said, and you pointed it out, Janelle, is that she wasn't always doing what I'm a physical therapist by profession, wasn't always doing what we would say, you can do this. And I think that's a critical thing for early interventions to understand, is that our obligation is to give information and encourage parents and coach them. And if you are ready to do this, we do this. I just had a conversation with someone the other day about the importance of people having information and therapists and providers really stepping back and saying, you're driving this car, you tell us how fast you want to go, we're happy to give you whatever you want. But at the same time, you talked about, some people saying, I can tell you're not doing anything. I probably would have not gone back to that person again. I probably would have said, okay, I'm done, right? But I think it's important that we have the knowledge and the expertise and we share that with parents with the understanding and the support in saying, you go at the speed you want to, and that's what we're here to support you at. Even if we know this would be really good to do. Sometimes the emotional ability and the physical ability, and you had another daughter and these two twins coming home and stuff going on just in life that everybody has, compounded by all this, and then to have someone say, well, I can tell you're not really working that hard. It blows my mind. But I think we need to have the information, give the information, and support at whatever rate the parents. And I just think that's a critical principle with early intervention.
Michelle, you have your hand up.
Hi, I'm also a physical therapist, and I really appreciate your sharing of this story. We in Southeast Early Intervention, so we're in Grand County and Carbon County and Emery County. We have the good fortune, in quotations, that we have one of our staff members who has had NICU story twice over, and she did has done a couple of in-services for our staff, similar to what you've just shared, so that we as providers can better understand what it's like for families coming home and how can we be the welcoming, supporting hands for that family, because it's terrifying. You came from full support to now figure it out on your own. And what am I supposed to do? I need to keep the child alive. I heard you say, Shanda. I just had a conversation with a family who's newly home with someone who has a lot of special needs and needs a lot of daily work. And mom was really struggling with keeping up with that schedule. I mean, they're going up north once a week for follow-up visits with specialties, and it's hard. It's painful work that the child's having. And I spent my time in my visit just affirming that it's okay for her to keep the relationship. And we worked out a way for her to do the strategies without putting the child in pain, even though in her mind, she's like, I've got to do this. The specialists have told me I've got to do this. And it was more about, okay, let's not damage your caregiver relationship. Let's not damage that trust and security, and find another way. Let's modify it. And that's what Kurt was saying. What we do in early intervention is significantly different as therapists as to what an outpatient therapist does. It's all about the relationship. So Shanda, thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and that's really important. I think I didn't understand the difference between what it meant to be a caregiver and what it meant to be a parent, because they're vastly different. And I think sometimes in our brains, we get this idea that we're going to come home from the hospital and they're going to require extra care for a while. But this is a lifetime of caregiving. And I think that is missed. And it's not about overwhelming the parent. It's just about this is kind of reality, and it's okay for you to ease into it and take it slow. Anyway, that's just, I didn't realize the difference for a long time between being a parent and being a caregiver.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to ask Kylie to say something so I can find her on my screen. And
I'm here.
Okay, there you are. It helps me then find you to say, I need to pin you. Okay.
All right, I don't have anything formal planned. I'm just gonna wing it.
That's
Just
good.
start talking, So my daughter, she's almost 5 now. Her name is Annalie. She has Down syndrome, and we got an at birth diagnosis. Nothing came up on the scans or anything when they did the anatomy scan. Um, so I ended up having to do a C-section, and I go back to recovery. And they ended up taking me to my room I was gonna stay in, and my husband was with Annalie. She was getting checked out by the pediatrician. And then the pediatrician comes in and he's like, yeah, she looks great. Everything's great. But children with Down syndrome. And I went, what? And he goes, children with Down syndrome. And I went, wait, what? He goes, oh, did you not know? I said, no, I did not know. So I just start like blankly staring at the wall and I'm like in shock. And my husband comes in, and of course he knew the midwife when they pulled Annalie to like the side room to like weigh her and clean her up, had mentioned to him, I am noticing signs of Down syndrome. And my husband had asked the pediatrician, like, please don't say anything to her until I get in the room. She has no idea. So that's how I ended up finding out. So my husband comes in and sees me like in shock and realized the doctor had told me. And he kind of just started like listing all of the things that like could go wrong, and then he kind of just like left. And thankfully my midwife came in and she's the one that gave me the support and kind of talked me through it, telling me that like these are the tests we need to do, we're not really sure, um, what could be wrong. She could be deaf. They have to do an echo. She could have heart defects, which they ended up doing an echo in the hospital. She ended up having 2 heart defects, an ASD and a PDA, which thankfully ended up closing on their own. So she didn't have to get any surgery. And then they tested her hearing, and she did end up failing those. So we got a referral to get her hearing checked. And I remember a social worker coming in and she gave me this like big black box, which I still have as like a keepsake, that had everything of like designer jeans in Bismarck, a whole bunch of different pamphlets. There was pamphlets in there for early intervention. And then early intervention ended up reaching out to me, and that process was really nice. I didn't really have to do anything. They set it up all for me. And I love the fact the visits were in our house, so I didn't have to take her to any more appointments than she already was going to. I felt really supported there. Any questions I had, if Kate didn't know, she would say, I'll find out for you. So I felt really, really supported. And then all of the extra like PTOT and speech, they were all wonderful too. I think when she was about 12 months, the PT was over with Kate, and I noticed that she like her head was like dropping, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but like something's not right. So Kelly, her OT, was watching her and like tracking how often, and then we ended up being able to get her an appointment for a neurologist and get an EEG, and she ended up getting a diagnosis of epilepsy, generalized epilepsy. So that's been something we've been working on off and on with breakthrough seizures, because the bigger she gets, we have to increase her dose, and that's been something we've been having to go back and forth on, trying to get a correct dose. Yeah, so she's been almost aged out now for 2 years now. But that whole process, I thought I could not have asked for better support than infant development. It was very overwhelming not knowing like what to do if I didn't have someone there to help on each week. They give you a handout on like, this is what you should work on, and then they check her progress the next week. And if she, you know, had got like mastered what we're working on, okay, now let's work on this, and getting that just instruction on like, okay, this is what I'm going to do this week. This is what I'm going to work on her with. And a lot of it was not anything that I had to worry about, because I had someone to help me and help me figure out what to do to help her become the best her, you know. Trying to think of what else. Does anyone have any questions? Anything else I need to cover?
I still find it very surprising, even though I hear things all the time. Sometimes the way that words are shared, or even the way that you were told of your child's diagnosis, we think that we get so much better at that, but it sounds like that was a tough one for you.
It was. Yeah, and my husband even told him she does not know. And he came out and was just like, children with Down syndrome. And I was like, what? Huh? But I mean, I could list, I've had other interactions that she was my first child. Yes. Yep. She's the one and only. Here, let me see if I didn't prepare but I can show on my phone. Oh, maybe. Gosh, it's too bright.
Sometimes if you tilt it down a little bit from the,
Maybe it's too bright. Hold on, let me dim it just a little. There she is.
oh, look at that. So adorable. I love little kids. Why we're in there.
So cute. And it's such a fun age. Gosh, I mean, I'm graduating in May with my nursing degree. So it does amaze me. I don't know if it's partially because I've had family members that have kind of said like the wrong thing. I don't know if it's because they're like they don't know what to say, or they're nervous, they don't want to say the wrong thing. But when Annalie ended up getting tubes in her ears to try to help with her hearing, it was an older doctor, but he came into the waiting room and he was like, yeah, surgery went like really good. And I was like, oh, that's great. And he had asked like, oh, is she your first? And I said, yep, she's, first and only one. And he went, first child and special needs. You drew the short end of that stick. And I went, what? So yeah, it's but that was also when I was more of a new mom. Now I've, found my voice and feel more comfortable advocating for Annalie.
Kylie,
Yeah.
I think anyone that knows a child or a person with Down syndrome doesn't agree with that,
Like,
because
that is
they're
not the short
most-
end of the stick. Listen, she's the happiest person
No.
I've ever met.
Yeah, they are the most beautiful people. So I think that you lucked out with her. She looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Kylie, I was wondering about the whole transition out of early intervention into the school setting. How did you find that went for you? And is there anything about that part of the process that you wish you knew more about ahead of time, or that we could do to support families?
I think the only thing Kate was really great about like helping me transition with the like, oh, she's gonna go to this school and this is how it's gonna go, and they'll do IEP meetings, and she kind of like walked me through it. The only thing I would say is Annalie's on Medicaid, and I did not realize that when she got it off infant development, she would no longer have a DDS waiver, since then she would no longer be eligible for Medicaid. So we ended up completely losing insurance for her once she aged out of infant development.
That's really good feedback to make sure families understand that, because I think in North Dakota anyways, if a child with a lifelong disability that's going to qualify for ongoing DD services, we tend to assume that means they get to stay on Medicaid, and that's
not necessarily the That's case. what I assumed. And I'm like, well, so- she has a lifelong disability. I thought that she would
Yeah.
just stay
Yeah.
on Medicaid.
Yeah, so then I think that's a really good point of discussion to have with service coordinators, those DDPMs, to make sure that they're having the conversation with families to know what other options they have, you know, like applying for the Social Security disability or other things like that. So that's a good point.
Hey, Kylie, there's a couple of questions in the chat. One about any support groups you found for Down syndrome that you liked, and the other one about what helped you become a better advocate. So maybe if you got a minute to address those.
Yeah. So we do Designer Genes in Bismarck. It's an organization specifically for Down syndrome people. So we do like the yearly walk. If you reach out to them with any like questions, concerns, they can send you like research or books for free. They're the ones that put together that like black box. There was books in there, all sorts of different stuff. So they're a wonderful resource if you have any questions as like a parent. I had reached out to Roxanne. She was the director. She's not the director anymore. She retired. But she sent me a book about potty training because I had no idea where to start. Because I was looking at like potty training in general online, but I was like, is there something that will possibly like work better for children with Down syndrome? So she sent me a potty training book that I did not have to pay for at all. So they've been a wonderful, wonderful resource. What was the other question? I'm trying to
The other question is what helped you become a better advocate?
Honestly, I think it was just time. I mean, Annalie also being my first child, just even a parent, getting more confident in just being a mom. And then it just kind of grew from there, just getting more confident, and not being like timid or afraid to be like, hey, I'm sure you didn't mean to sound mean, but what you just said was very insensitive. And I'm sure you didn't mean it, but if you have any questions, let's like phrase it in this way that's more sensitive and, you know. So it just kind of took me a little time to gain my confidence as a mom.
The other question is, did you find any support groups for Down syndrome that you liked?
Just the Designer Genes is usually where I have always gotten my support. I do have a friend on Facebook. She has a daughter with Down syndrome, so we've talked a little bit. And I've talked with the new director of Designer Genes to see if maybe we can get Minot moms together and see if we can put something together. Just, you know, whether it be like play dates with all the kids or maybe like having mom nights where it's just, you know, us. So, yeah.
And then Michelle put in the chat, there's a wonderful comprehensive support for children with Downs to up to age 21. Michelle, do you know what that is?
Yeah, I forgot to put the link in before I clicked enter, so it's coming now.
Okay.
It's at a Denver Children's Hospital. It's called the C Center, and I'm on in the southeastern corner of Moab, and so Denver's only about 5.5 hours. And I had a kiddo's family with Down syndrome here who discovered this support, and it's just very comprehensive. You get the entire team looking at all areas and making sure everything's kind of approached and giving homework assignments, what to look at next, what testing to do, etc. So there, I just put it in.
Awesome.
Oh, and then one of the questions on here, are all families at risk for losing Medicaid after 3 nationwide? I think it is different state by state. I have one of my cousins is she's disabled, and they live in Missouri, and they had a waiver that you could sign up for if you prove that it's like it's a lifelong like disability. So she's now on Medicaid, and she's not gonna lose it. So I know it is like state by state, I believe.
And in North Dakota, I think after the age of 18, depending on what kind of health insurance the family has, they're possibly eligible for that again. But they have to become an adult. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Annalie she does have another DDS waiver now. She got approved for respite care.
Other questions or thoughts for Kylie that you would want to know as an early intervention provider?
You mentioned that your early intervention provider was helpful in like giving you something to do each week that kind of kept you focused. Was there anything else that you found particularly supportive from your early intervention provider or providers?
I mean, I would definitely say like emotional support too. You know, I was able to tell her like we had a rough week, you know. And she would help me, you know, just kind of if I needed to just talk about the week, and she'd tell me like, you know, it's okay to not have a good week, where some weeks I'm like, we just were trying to get through the week. You know, we didn't really even do any of the exercises, or, you know, it was just, we tried and she was not having it, you know, or she'd be like, that's okay, you know, we can try again next week, you know. Some progress is better than, you know, no progress. So it was just nice to just have someone where you didn't feel like you were doing it alone.
That's awesome. Thank you.
A really good point from both you and Shanda that you talked about is that as early interventionists, one of the big things that we can do to support you all is understanding that those things are smaller, and that if you have to take a minute to just also be a mom and take care of yourselves. I think that was a good reminder for all of us too, for the families that we're working with. Hey, I'm gonna then ask Caitlin to come off mute and speak so I can find you amongst the group. Caitlin, can you hear me? I thought I saw your name.
Yes.
There you are. Okay, there you are. I can never find everybody to pin you. So Caitlin is our next presenter who is going to share with us her story and what we can, what she would like us to know.
Okay, sorry. So I actually work for Root for Kids. Sorry, let me move my location so I can turn my screen on.
Okay, I was gonna say you could.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I apologize.
No, you're good.
So I started my professional experience back in 2012 when I went to school for early childhood special ed, and it was just my passion, what I loved. And then I don't know why my camera's not there. And then I ended up, we're in Utah and we had a last minute move across the state and I found out I was pregnant. Surprise, surprise. But then that surprise just keeps giving as my daughter gets older and we are just learning more delays that are coming into play. As someone that wears both hats, what I did for work and then to have a surprise baby that was not thriving the way she should have. She actually was considered failure to thrive for a while. It took the doctors a while to figure out what was going on. Unfortunately, we didn't have the best experience with medical providers to begin with, and because of that, my daughter just started falling more and more behind. Actually, understandably, because of my daughter's, she lost 17% body weight by 5 days old, and it took over 2 months to get back to her original birth weight. And the doctor was concerned, but his way of handling that concern was telling me that he basically hinting towards neglect. And I asked him, I said, are you going down the road of neglect? And at this point, I was in his office every 2 days for weight checks. And he said, I'm advocating for my patient. And as much as she's my third kid, as much as I see that you're a loving mom, postpartum is hard. And if DCFS shows up at your door, you need to know that I'm doing the right thing. And I told him, I said, I'm in a field that if there's concerns, you need to call. I recognize that, but I'm in your office every 2 days. She's not gaining weight. I've done everything I can do. Anyway, and yes, I am experiencing postpartum depression. My life has been upturned. And he just reminded me that my daughter couldn't speak. And so at this point, the only thing he could do was advocate for her. And if DCFS needed to be called, he would. So moving forward, DCFS was never called. So it almost seemed more of a threat that I was just not understanding well. So fast forward my daughter had just been sick. She had been on a feeding tube for the first year. She was in and out of the hospital. And it was hard. Where's this delay coming from? Is this from history? Is this from being a month early? Where's this delay coming? And then she just was falling more and more behind. And a new pediatrician at the time said, well, when she's 18 months, we can start early intervention. And I was so thankful that I had the experience I had, because I said, no, we can start it now. And we moved forward with the referral. It was once I started early intervention with my daughter that everything changed. Everything changed. I had the best providers that came into my house for the first time since having Kennedy. I felt heard. I felt understood. I was seen as a mother that was trying her hardest with no answers, which was really hard. I just needed answers, and sometimes answers aren't there, but I needed to know that I wasn't being blamed. I was already blaming myself. And so the provider was great. We worked on feeding, we worked on some motor skills. And then as time went on, unfortunately, my daughter wasn't picking up the skills. So we had OT, PT, and just a developmental specialist, which then I was like, this is I should be able to do this. I just felt so inadequate. But it was just a different hat that I knew how to wear working with families, but I didn't know how to do it with myself, and to feel forgiveness with myself and accept that I needed support. Anyways, she's had 2 brain MRIs, which does show abnormalities. And a lot of her clinical observations show cerebral palsy. The doctors do not want to the neurologist and her primary care don't want to fully give her that diagnosis until she gets a little older, because she's mild. It's there. It's mild, but it's there. And at the end of the day, we're doing the therapies that are required and needed to help her. So as a mom, I've been able to kind of accept that sometimes answers aren't there as long as we're getting the support the kids need. And that's where I'm at with my daughter. She's 2.5. I'm gonna take a page out of Kylie's book and show you a picture of her. She was just fitted last month for new orthotic braces to help her balance, and she's just doing awesome. She's now doing a little dance class. Oh, I don't know if you can see.
The thing on yours is you have your background blurred. So you would need to unblur
Oh, I
your
see.
background.
Yep. Thank you.
I saw the cute red dress. That's adorable.
So this is my sassy little girl, and I am so thankful for that sass because it is what's made her resilient. On top of her cerebral palsy diagnosis, she also has some medical concerns, and one of the providers with early intervention really helped me with the idea that we don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg. Did she fall more behind because we now have that understanding, or was it because her asthma and she had croup for 5 months straight? We don't know. And being hospitalized often, it did play a role on her development. So anyways, and now I love that I decided to go back to work almost a year ago, and it's been the best thing for both. She and I get to go home in homes and work with families in the same business that came into my house.
Michelle, you have your hand up.
Caitlin, thanks so much for sharing. And you have the dual perspective on either side. So for us as early intervention providers, I think we run into parents who are having the guilt. You know, am I doing enough? Did I whatever is causing the guilt? Were there any aha moments you had that we could use to support families who are feeling guilt? What was helpful in alleviating guilt?
It's hard because I remember when I was in schooling, one of my professors explained kids with it's a grieving cycle, right? And grief, you never know where you're going to land on the cycle. So at times I feel that guilt, and I am able to talk through and walk down that road with a provider, and that's all I needed. Other times I just have to sit with it myself and just be heard, but then also I don't know how to explain it. It's sometimes I feel like a hypocrite because I'm telling parents, you're doing everything you can. You are absolutely showing up and doing the best you can. But then I come home and be like, dang, what am I doing wrong? She's been doing this for so long and she's still falling and getting hurt. So it's just a cycle. And I think it's taught me to accept and understand where parents are going to be going through that grief cycle, that at times they feel guilty and then at times they feel good and feel confident. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It affirms for me that it's about the connection. It's about being with the person you're in front of. Mm-hmm. I've heard of responding to emotion with emotion and responding to reason with reason. That's how you stay connected with wherever the person on the other side of the conversation is. So if you feel like that's helpful, then great. If you come up with any other aha moments after this, you're thinking about it, please send them to Janelle and maybe she'll send them on to me, because that's always the hardest part, is knowing where do we help the family in that process in the best way we can. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Crystal has your hand up.
So my question is, our job is kind of to help build confidence and competence in parents. Is there anything that you feel like went well in what happened in your services so that you felt more confident or competent?
I do think, the model of the coaching and showing, but then also like it's been mentioned before, that the providers came in and recognized I was human, recognized I was a mom of 3, recognized that sometimes I wasn't able to work on the skills they left for me. And I never felt, I already had enough guilt on my shoulders that I didn't feel guiltier to say, you know what, honestly, I haven't worked on that. And they were just accepting of that. They never were like, well, then why am I coming? It just gave me the encouragement to keep going and build on top of it.
So one thing that you said, and I appreciate your story, that was a great perspective from it. But one of the big takeaways that I heard, and it always drives me crazy, so I want to open this up to a bunch of people, is that when your doctor said they can't get services until they're this age, like what is some things that you guys all do to find some help and support in helping community or others know that early intervention starts at birth, and take away this wait and see attitude? Rebecca, I see you shaking your head. I don't know if you have that problem in North Dakota. And Caitlin, I just spoke over you, so I'm sorry.
You're fine. I was just gonna say, as an aunt and with friends, I've told myself, even before my daughter, I would rather be the person having that hard conversation with someone I love than to prevent, then later on down the road, regret not speaking up and telling them where services are and how to receive services. And I explain it to some that like it's just like special ed in school, but for in the home.
A great perspective.
In North Dakota, we have worked really hard on child find and just getting the word out and letting people know that anybody can refer for early intervention. It doesn't have to be the pediatrician. And in our area, we have some pediatricians that are really good about referring, and then others that you're like, why didn't you, so it's hard to understand when they know it's available, but do they just forget? I don't know like what the reason is, but there are definitely cases where with certain pediatricians, it's very frustrating because sometimes we even hear from the parent, I kept telling the doctor, something is not right. Something is wrong with my kid. There's just something not right. And then sometimes it takes months and months and months before they finally get the referral, or the parent finds out about us and just calls us themselves. So I don't know. We keep working on provider education, and I think it's just one of those things you have to keep doing.
Over and over. I just know I'm on a couple of committees that are national, and that is one of the big things national is how do we get rid of that wait and see, or they can't do it until this certain age, like it. And so anybody else have any other thoughts or things that they do in their area that helps?
We've started having medical students. We have a medical school in town now, and have the medical students come to do some of our events and some things with us. And I think that it's helpful for them to get an idea before they go into practice that we're around.
Oh, that's an awesome idea.
Well, I just want to say, pardon me, that it all started at birth when she lost 17% of her body weight in 5 days. And that is a tremendous amount of weight for a newborn to lose. And I think it does start in the hospitals. It starts in your level 1, your birth in hospitals, having a nursing staff that realizes this child is not breastfeeding well, is not bottle feeding well, and calling in people to help you. So that's where it starts. And all the stupidity afterwards, threatening DCFS. I mean, where did he pull that one out of? I mean, that is really, really wrong. And I apologize on behalf of being a medical professional, but I do think it starts day one at birth. So how do you reach your nurses? Because it's not the doctors you're trying to reach, it's the nurses.
That's a good perspective too.
One other idea we have, sorry to talk so much, but we have our nurse go in and do rounds at the NICU weekly, and that helps to kind of make that first initial contact with the family, if they're there. If they're not, it keeps reminding the staff that we're here.
I think we would all like to be over referred to rather than have people falling through the cracks. I'd rather have 10 that don't qualify and then get the one that does than
Yeah,
you don't have to wait and see. You can go see.
right.
Oh,
I can't agree more with that. If I hear the wait and see process one more time or mindset, I just want to scream, because even if we come out like what was just said is, and they don't qualify for service, at least that family knows that services are an option. At least that family knows what to look for after that. And that just because they don't qualify right now doesn't mean they can't or won't qualify later. And they can share that information with people they know that might need it.
yes, exactly. And then they have a connection. They have a connection. I'm always keep my number, you know.
Just so everybody on the call is aware of some of the things that the American Academy of Pediatrics is doing nationally on their level is they are promoting more information around early intervention Part C throughout the nation. They are trying to do a highlight of developmental milestones and monitoring or surveillance throughout all their newsletters. And they are also really advocating to get early child care champions in each state. So just so that you guys are all aware of what is happening that American Academy of Pediatrics is doing, because nationally they are hearing the same complaints that we're hearing. And so anybody else have any thoughts or things that they would like to talk to these amazing families that were so graciously and shared their stories with us? It was so helpful to hear from all three of you and hear those great perspectives. I really appreciate everything and willingness that you guys had to be able to share it, and such cute kids. You know, as you guys all heard, my daughter was in here at the very beginning, and every time people were sharing me those cute little pictures of their kids, I wanted to just shrink her down and say, go back to being little for me. So adorable. So thank you so much. Next month, we are going to be having the Utah Parent Center. I know people in North Dakota might feel like that's just about Utah, but every state has a parent center. So the things that hopefully the Utah Parent Center will share will also transfer to where it is in your state. But they're going to be talking to us about some things that they offer after a family gets or receives a diagnosis. So thank you again for everybody who was on the call. If you'll also take a minute and complete the survey, we will see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.